Welcome to Spiritual Cartel's Principles meeting. Tonight we are looking at principle of love. This week I'm pleased to introduce Mathematics, who has kindly agreed to come and share for us. Over to you, man.
So my name is Mathematics. I'm a grateful man in recovery, and my problem is me. And the application of the 12 steps in a relationship with God is my solution. I said I'm a grateful man in recovery. I always thought that being in recovery meant that I just stay away from a drink or a drug. And then I just like go to meetings and through time, I was able to put together some time before, staying clean and sober off of meetings and fellowship, but that never got me long-term recovery. I know that there's three sides of the triangle. I go to meetings to feel better and I fellowship to feel better. And then I do the 12 steps to get better, but then I do service work to stay better. And so my best days are what I'm doing today. I'm on a meeting. I'm going to predominantly talk about the solution in the 12 steps. And then I'm also doing service work, all as one. And I know that the word recovery means to get back something that was taken. And so what was taken was my ability to love. And that's because when my ego's in charge, it's hard to form wholesome relationships with a higher power and other people when all of your journeys and all of your connections are based off of ego, lack of trust. And then most of my situations revolved around lust. And so just in my share today, I'm probably going to tell you what my life looked like without love. I know that step 8 covers love and then what my life looked like with love in it. And so when I told you the application of the 12 steps, what the 12 steps does is, it's a 12-step program, and the 12th letter in the alphabet is L, that stands for love. So what these 12 steps do is it gives me a process to crush my ego and allow some love and some God and to be able to come in. And so I also know that there's 4 letters to love, but there's also 4 levels. There's mental, there's emotional, there's spiritual, and then there's the one that's physical. But I know that I need mental, emotional, and spiritual recovery in maturity, emotional maturity in order to grow. So that's the key component for me, because a lot of times, years ago without this program, I was confusing lust with love and infatuation with love, and obsessing over things that I was obsessing over with love. But love's a nurturing thing. Love heals. It's the best healing agent on the planet. But when I spoke in the beginning of the share, I said that my problem is me. My problem is me because my mind and my ego won't allow me to surrender to the solution to my spiritual malady. And so on page 52 in the big book, it talks about the bedevilments, and there's 8 bedevilments. And those bedevilments have basically governed my whole life. I always tell myself I'm not enough. I have problems with work. I have problems with relationships. I'm basically allergic to myself. And what I do is I feel uncomfortable in my own skin. I kind of break out in these uncomfortable hives as soon as I open up my eyes in the morning. And so without a solution that's spiritual based, I normally, my first 3 addictions when I was a lot younger were validation, approval, sugar, acceptance from other people, and then acting out in school with bad behavior. And that would fill that void, that spiritual void that I had, because I always knew that something was wrong with me. I always felt different than other people. I come from a loving family. We had Christmases, we had Thanksgiving. I had family members that told me that they love me and they care about me. I went to camps. I went to the Cub Scouts. I went to Shoot Straight Camp. I had some pretty good sneakers. I was breaking and wild styling, and when all that first came out, I had the cassette player in my room. But I know that my upbringing is not what makes me an alcoholic or an addict. It's the fact that trauma might make me willing to try something sooner than I'm supposed to, because I'm going through this internal conflict. But I've been going through trauma. For me, the spiritual malady is the worst trauma on the planet, because the spiritual malady, if you look at it, gives birth to that mental obsession. And inside the word obsession, you see an N, or O, or I, a S, or E. That's that noise in my head and that voice. I'm sure that there's a lot of people on here that are familiar with that voice. And it's that loud chatter that I get in my head that constantly tells me I'm not good enough, constantly has me comparing myself to other people, constantly has me judging my body, judging myself. I just always feel inadequate, and I've been suffering from this spiritual malady ever since I was born. And that noise always just kept getting louder and louder and louder. And I would try all these different things, and my mother, I went to church school. My mother put me in like tutoring schools after school, and it was just never seemed to be a good fit. And I found the best fit that fit for a long time. And drugs and alcohol weren't my problem. They were actually my solution for a long time. And at 13 years old, I bumped into my first mind altering substance. It was some marijuana that I stole out of from my mother's boyfriend, and I didn't know exactly what it was. And like that marijuana for the first time gave me that warm hug that really felt like love. It gave me that warm embrace that really felt like, the drugs and the alcohol made me really feel like they care. For some people, this disease is progressive, meaning it gets like worse over time. For me, my disease was instant. It's been like on and popping since 13, 90 going north. When people ask me, Math, what are you addicted to? I'm addicted to anything that makes me feel good. And the alcohol and the drugs and the drug dealing and the cigarettes and the women, I experienced all those things at 13, and that's basically become my mental obsession my whole life. And that mental obsession, it means like a mental obsession is a persistent reoccurring thought that doesn't respond to logic or reason. And the drug dealing wouldn't let me respond to logic or reason. The girls, like the being obsessed and doing whatever it took to get a girl's attention, wouldn't let me respond to logic or reason. Anytime that I did a mind altering substance, it wouldn't let me respond to logic or reason. And that's just because the spiritual malady was untreated. And I felt good when I would do the substance and the spiritual malady was being treated. But from 13 all the way until 17, I really progressed. I went to my first treatment center at the age of 16. And I love treatment centers, but treatment centers teach me coping skills, right? But I need more than just coping skills. I don't need like a self-help program. I need a God program. I don't need self-help is good, and they give me coping skills and they give me these tools, but all these tools need power. And I never really was like able to utilize that power. And I'm not talking about like being able to bench 315 power or being able to like, be on a construction site and be an iron worker, that type of power. The third and the fourth letter in the word power spells we, right? Because this is a we program, it's not a me program. And the first word in the 12 steps spells we. And that we gets bigger and bigger. First, that we is like me and my home group. Then that we turns into me and my sponsor. Then that we turns into me and maybe now it's a recovery coach. That they can turn into my sponsor, my recovery coach, my therapist. Then it turns into my family if they become educated, because sometimes family thinks that they're helping, but they're more enabling. I highly suggest family members going to Al-Anon. Once my mother went to Al-Anon, the party was actually over, because she learned how to practice healthy boundaries, and healthy boundaries are what I need in order to grow. And so that we and that it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I would really say that like when people work a program and have a home group, your first sponsor is kind of like your home group, because you form these relationships with people, and then you get the sponsor that actually sits down with you once a week and takes you through the 164 of the book and introduces you to the solution. And so I went to treatment, and they told me back in 1986 when I was 16 years old to go home, get a home group, get a sponsor, be of service to others, do my best to do these things. But my mind wasn't rich enough to wrap my mind around that. And so I would highly suggest, if there's any newcomers, and shout outs to all the newcomers and the people that are new, you don't want to be like myself and call yourself an alcoholic or an addict for 32 years, but not know why. And so I saw the steps in meetings for years, and I saw this solution that could introduce me to love, because steps 1, 2, and 3 teach me how to form this loving relationship with my higher power. 12-step program, 12 letter in alphabet's L. Steps 4 through 7 teach me why I haven't been able to love myself. Steps 8 and 9 give me the ability to go back in all those relationships that were broken. I'm able to form loving relationships again, which is needed in this program because the opposite of alcohol and addiction is connection. That's why I need to make these amends to people, because there's some people, those lack of amends of actually making me sick. And then the resentments that I wrote in step 4, everybody that was on my resentment list, once I own my part, take accountability, that means that I have to go back and make amends to them. And so it was very easy for me to make my step 8 amends list, which is the accountability step. And then step 9 is the responsibility step. So I went to treatment. They made the suggestion. I didn't want to take the suggestion. And if there's anybody else on here that's an alcoholic or an addict of the hopeless variety, if we don't take the suggestions, and on page 20 and 21 in the big book, it's up to you. This is the only chronic illness, and I always have to make sure I say this. This is the only chronic illness where the patient diagnoses themselves, and you can diagnose yourself on page 20 or 21 of the big book, whether you're a moderate alcoholic or an addict, whether you're a hard drinker or a hard alcoholic or an addict, or on page 21 if you're one of the hopeless variety. I'm an alcoholic and an addict of the hopeless variety, which means that it's going to take more than just meetings for me and fellowship for me. I have to form this relationship with God. And so when I don't have my solution, my 3 guarantees are jails, institutions, and death. And so that's been the norm of me. I was in Walpole. I got arrested at 17, was in jail at 17. I was in state prison by 18. I was back again in state prison at 23. I was back again in state prison at 35. And then I was back again in state prison at 44. I've been in 131 treatment centers, 8 holdings, or holdings like where you go before a halfway house, 4 halfway houses. And so, like I said earlier, I would go into all these programs and I was still never knew why I was an alcoholic or an addict, because I don't really learn why I'm an alcoholic or an addict and about this allergy and this phenomenon of craving and this mental obsession unless I open up the program, which is the big book, right? And so that's the program. Meetings are a part of the program, right? That's a part of the program. And to me, going to meetings is the easiest part of the program because it's the fun part, and you go there and there's like everybody's hugging and everybody's telling them they love you and stuff. But being meeting reliant for me doesn't work, and then me being step reliant doesn't work. I'm supposed to be God reliant. And when I say step reliant, meaning that like I'm still going to act however I choose to act, and then I'm going to just use the step works to go back and make my wrongs right. Right? How many pieces of inventory am I going to write before I actually do some work around changing? How many times am I going to hurt somebody and just keep using amends to make it better, over and over and over again? So I went to these programs, I kept going to prison, and I'm one of those people that goes into the places where I'm sick, but I always want to act like I'm well. I got to have the clothes, I got to have the phone, have this, I gotta have my haircut, and you gotta drop off my razors so that I can impress everybody. And can you have, drop off all these sick? And internally, I'm spiritually sick. And I like to tell people that, especially for the new people, that the acronym for me for sick is spiritually ill can kill and spiritually ignorant can kill. And when I say spiritually ignorant, meaning when I have no information on what it is to be spiritual. And I like to break it down real simple, that the first letter in spiritual is S and the last letter in spiritual is L, because it's self-love, talking about love again, and then spread love. And then the last 6 letters in the word spiritual spell ritual. I'm going to practice ritualistically. I'm going to practice self-love and then spreading love on a consistent basis. And so I I walked around and I went to meetings and I hung out front smoking cigarettes and I sold drugs in recovery. I always sat in the back. I was, when cell phones came out, I was always on my phone. It was always about like, presenting as Gucci on the outside, but came out on the inside. My outfit was the most important thing about the meeting, making sure that like I showed up late so everybody would be seated when I came into the meeting and they could see that like my sneakers matched and everything was good. And I was never able, I did put together 2 years, 11 months, but it wasn't recovery. It was just abstinence. Because what happens is if I just want to be clean and sober, I just go to meetings. But if I want to think different, act different, treat others better, treat myself better and be a better human being in the world, then I have to actually practice the 12 steps. So I always thought that when I was just going to meetings, I always thought that like my problem was just I drank too much. But I know after the hyphen in step one, it's no longer about the substance. It's all about the thinking. It's all about the fact that like I have this lack of a relationship with God. And so that's what I was saying before. 1 through 3 teach me how to have a loving relationship with my higher power. 4 through 7 teach me why I was lacking the love for myself, the exact nature of my wrongs. And 5, go back to 4. Resentment, which is wrong judgment, fear, which is wrong belief, and then sex conduct, which is wrong actions. 8 and 9, I go back and I repair those relationships. And then 10, 11, and 12 is how I maintain them. I know now about the spiritual malady. I have an allergy that leads to a phenomenon of craving. I know that 1 out of 15 temperate drinkers have this. We process drugs and alcohol different than other people. That leads to a mental obsession, and then I lose my moral compass with the spiritual loss of values. And so, when I lose my moral compass, what it really means to me is I lose my ability to love. I lose my ability to care for other people. I lose my ability to be empathetic, and I become like this individual where it's all about getting the substance into my body. And so after multiple incarcerations, 32 years of addiction, 7 overdoses, multiple years of broken relationships with my kids. I do have 5 children now, but during my addiction years, I had 4 children. I come from a good family, and I ripped my family through the mud as I'm going through my whole addiction. Um, I finally was incarcerated on my 4th state bid, and there might be some people on here that are like, I'm willing to do this for my recovery, but I'm not willing to do that. We put this line in the sand that I'm going to do this. I'll go to treatment, but I'm not going to further treatment. I'll go to treatment and further treatment, but I'm not going to get a home group. I'll go to further treatment, boom, but I'll get a sponsor, but I'm not going to, do the steps. And some people think that they have a sponsor because they're talking about, the Red Sox and how they're failing and how their girlfriend's treating them. That's just talking. Talking doesn't keep me sober. I've been talking since I was 18 months. The first Southern sponsor is S, because it's my duty. It's the duty of the sponsor to introduce me to the solution. And he does that through taking me through the steps, right? And the question to ask the sponsor is in step 12, have you had a spiritual awakening? If the person says they haven't had a spiritual awakening, they can qualify to be a spiritual advisor, or they can qualify to be like a friend or support. But they're not qualified to be my sponsor, because the sponsor is supposed to take me through the steps and introduce me to God, and put God's, it put God's hand into my hand, but then it's up to me to put God into my heart and mind. So I finally I went to prison this time, and I did the drug program, and I started forming, I get some momentum. I was getting introduced to my rituals, to my routines. I was getting acclimated around being around, I've always put in all the work to fit in, but I would never put in the work to stand out. And the lady came and asked me as I was getting ready to come home, do you want to go to further treatment? And my first instinct was no, because I don't like to follow rules. I want to just do everything my way. I wanted to come home, and I'm mostly in the laborers union, and I wanted to come home and just sell pills. We have this place in Massachusetts called Mass Ave. It's like Skid Row or wherever, there's a drug infested area. I was going to come home and sell pills professionally again, and just continue to hurt the people I hurt the most. And she said it was a spiritual experience for me. She said, Matt, you're 44 years old and you've never had your own apartment. All your relationships with your kids are broken, your family's broken. You're a professional couch surfer. You have more time spent in institutions and stuff than like maybe more than anybody I've ever met before. Why don't you come home and try something different? And I told her that now I'm not going to do that. And then I went and thought about it, and I had a moment of clarity, and I said, you know what, man, I'm just going to go there for a week, and if I don't like it, I'm wrapped up. I got no parole or probation. I'll just leave. And like I went there, and I went there with $70 to my name, the clothes on my back, some state flip flops, a state shirt. Instantly, they told me that we couldn't have our phone for 30 days. That was like the biggest blessing in disguise, because I could just focus on me. I like to use social media and getting a lot of validation and approval for other people, because I lack the ability to practice self validation. So I always need validation from a woman. I can smoke, sniff, and shoot loves, likes, and comments off of social media, just like it's a drug. You know what I mean? So I went to this program, and it was time for me to fill out my itinerary. After my 30 days, we were able to go to appointments, and it was time for me to fill out my itinerary. And like I like to go to meetings where people are selling drugs and they're selling clothes out the trunk, and people are selling Lucy cigarettes, and we're buying each other's pills, and I'm buying people's food stamps. Those are the meetings that I normally like to go to, where there's a lot of action and you're preying on the girls in the halfway house and stuff like that. And if there's any new people, if girls kept you sober, come on, girls don't keep us sober. You know what I'm saying? God keeps us sober. No, trust me, if girls kept us sober, man, I'd have 30 years clean. But the gentleman that I had that ended up being my case manager, he did the best thing for me ever. Is he sat there and he said, "Nah, you're not going to those meetings. You go into a solution-based meeting." And a solution-based meeting is like when people predominantly talk about the 12 steps. They predominantly talk about being of service to other people. They predominantly talk about sponsorship, trust God, clean house, help others. And then they predominantly talking about doing the work that is laid out, the way it's laid out. And I'm not, if there's anybody that's just going to meetings and that works for you, that's fine. But just to my personal experience, I've never, when I was drinking and drugging, I've never skipped any steps. And so the last time I looked at the triangle, the foundation of the program is the 12 steps. So me working the 12 steps, me being in the 12-step program, but not working the 12 steps is like me going to a basketball game where there's no basketball. It's like me going to a barber shop that has no clippers. So if I really want to get the experience of the program, I have to work the 12 steps, because the dope of the program is to be of service to other people. But my big ego is not going to help other people through service, because my big ego is going to say, if I'm not getting something out of it, I'm not doing it. This is why I have to do a thorough step 3. People say, Math, why do we have to do step 3? If it's left up to our will, we're never going to do the work in step 4. We're never going to get honest in step 5. We're not going to look at our character defects. We're not going to address our shortcomings. We're not going to sit there and make amends. So I have to do a thorough step 3 so that I can get, because my will is my thinking. So I went to the solution-based meeting, and there was love in the meeting. And when I say love in the meeting, there was God energy in the meeting. The meeting was full of love. Everybody said welcome. People gave me their phone numbers. I felt at home at that meeting. It was a white light experience for me. And when I say a white light experience, like my spiritual awakening is of the educational variety. But for me, a white light experience is when things happen different than they used to happen before, but I can't tell you why. I can't tell you why I was willing to even go to this meeting at the hospital, because I usually deviate from the meeting. I can't tell you why I was willing to sit in the first 2 rows, because I usually sit in the back, gossip, and do all the stuff that other people might do in the meeting. I actually sat in the front. I don't know why I was willing to get a service position. And then after a couple of months of going to this meeting, I kept hearing everybody talk about do the steps, do the steps, do the steps. And then I finally actually got a sponsor, and I started my process on this journey of doing the steps. And doing the steps and has been the game changer for me. There's 31 pages of action. So on page 52, I live in the bedevilments. And I always tell people that page 52, 5 plus 2 is 7. That's what my life looks like. The 7th letter in the alphabet is G. I live on page 52 when I don't have a God in my life. I live on page 52 in the bedevilments. There's 7 letters in the word program when I don't have a program, right? And I live on page 52. There's also 7 letters in the word morning. And my motto is, if you win the morning, you win the day. This is a chronic illness, right? Most chronic illnesses, you treat them in the morning. When someone has diabetes, they don't wait to take their insulin when it's time to go to bed at night. When someone has high blood pressure, right? They don't address their high blood pressure when it's time to go to bed at night. You have to address your chronic illness in the morning if you want to sit there and feel good during the course of the day. And I know every morning I wake up with untreated alcoholism. I have this hole, right? They call it a God-sized hole. And it's that spiritual void. And that's the spiritual malady. And the spiritual malady makes me feel restless. it makes me feel irritable, and it makes me feel discontent because the spiritual malady is an act of is it's a lack of love, right? And I don't have this love. So they tell me that that coin that I keep talking about, that coin, if I work all three sides of that coin can actually fill that void. But what happens is I put the coin on and I fill the void, but while I'm sleeping, the coin falls off. And I have to get up the next day and do the work and put the coin back on there again. It's just like when I'm drinking and I'm using the drugs that I used the day before don't keep me high the next day. The alcohol that I drank the day before, it doesn't keep me, high the next day. So I have to sit there and work this program. I have a chronic illness and I have to treat this chronic illness on a daily basis. And I went through the steps, and then after I got to steps one through two and three were mental. They were pretty easy. I had, but the doctor's opinion in the first 43 pages, that's all about step one. They give me 51 pages because I have to get that first step perfect. Then we went on to step two. I think that was from like 43 to 58 or something like that. We did step two. And then it came down to step three. Those first three steps were fairly didn't take me a lot of time. It wasn't a hard adjustment for me to do it. And then the real work came when I started to get to step four. And I did the work and I started to get relief. I did steps 4 and 5 simultaneously, which means every time I went to go meet with my sponsor to read, we would actually read some of the resentments I had, because the resentments and the fears and the wrong conduct, the sex conduct, the wrong actions from the sex conduct, that's actually what's keeping me sick. So my sponsor was like, "Why, if it takes you 7 months to write your 4 step, why would I want you to carry that poison around with you all that time?" So we kind of did 4 and 5 together. I had amazing experience spending my hour with God in step 5. That step 8, that accountability step, when I had to sit there and write, some of the names were easy for me to write. Other people, my ego was telling me that I'm not going to make the amends, and my sponsor, and it wasn't, when I say my ego, it was just fear, right? Fear gives birth to anger, and then anger gives birth to resentment. And that's what they call the triangle of self obsession. And then the solution for that is fear has to be replaced with faith, anger has to be replaced with love, and then resentment has to be replaced with acceptance. The left column, the negative, those are character defects. The right column are spiritual principles. And I guess that's the basis of this program, as you guys talk about spiritual principles. So in step 12, when it talks about practice these principles in all of our affairs, what they're telling you is spiritual principles are the opposites of character defects. My character defects keep me sick and all the others around me sick, because all my relationships are what they talk about on page 52 in the big book and the bedevilments. But then when I live by spiritual principles, all of a sudden children that weren't speaking to me, employers that wouldn't employ me before, I'm employable now, right? The professional couch surfing has stopped because I'm living by spiritual principles. I can pay my rent now, right? I don't have to sneak on the bus anymore. I can have a car now. You know what I'm saying? I don't pick cigarette butts off the ground. With this love and living by spiritual principles, I've been able to stop smoking cigarettes for 9 years, because they say if you can stop smoking, you can basically stop doing anything. So I did, when I got to step 8, we made the list, and that's the accountability step, where I personally take accountability. And then I went to step 9, and that's where I take responsibility. And so my sponsor gave me a couple of easy one. Moms is always going to be easy. Um, you got to let me know how much time I got, because I can talk a dog off a meat wagon. How much time am I looking at?
Like another 5, 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
All right, cool. All right, I can break it down. So I made some easy amends, then I made some medium ones, and then I made a hard one. And then my sponsor sent me out to start sponsoring other people. And the dope of this program, the way you get high in this program, is to sit down one-on-one with another alcoholic or an addict, is to take the time to be of service, whether it's a 12-step call, taking someone to a treatment center, just being someone that can like listen, on the phone, whatever it is that you can do to be of service to other people without asking for anything in return. That is the dope of this program. So if I just do the 12 steps, if I just go to meetings, and if I just pray, I'm still using all I statements. Nowhere in the 12 steps or the 12 traditions does it say I, me, or mines. Everything is we, our, and us. I, me, and minds is isolation, which kills us. We, our, and us is connection, that's love, that saves us. So I stay connected now. I'll have 9 years of recovery next month. Yeah, and so I still work a program. I run a Zoom meeting every morning at 6 o'clock on Zoom. That's like Boston time. I know there's people from all over the country. I still have sponsees. I try not to go over three because it just gets too hectic. I tried to sponsor everybody before and I realized that that was all my ego. I do speaking engagements and stuff, but I can't say yes to everything. It is okay to say no. No stands for next opportunity, which means I might have to say no, but on the next opportunity I can say yes, because I want to tell everybody yes because a lack of love, right? I'm a professional people pleaser. I want everybody to like me. So I realized that it is okay for me to set a healthy boundary, because every time I'm saying yes to something, I'm saying no to my kids. Every time I'm saying yes to something, I might be saying no to some inventory I'm supposed to write. Every time I'm saying yes to something, I might be saying no to self-care. So one of my major things that I do is I make sure I do that 10-step inventory. That's in the moment, and then the moral inventory in step 4 that deals with the past. And I take those resentments, I do my inventory. Do I do it perfectly every day? No, but if it does, I can feel it if I don't do it. So I'm on top of it more often than not, because it's better for me to do these things so that things become water under the bridge than me not to do these things and then they actually cause an explosion for me. So in closing, like I said in the beginning, this whole thing is all about forming that relationship with the love. My higher power is loving. I know that I don't know, everybody that I know that works this program talks about how loving, caring, and understanding their higher power is. And this program has taught me not only how to love my higher power, it's given me the tools on how to love myself. It's given me the tools on how to love community, how to love my family, how to be gentle. I work in the recovery field now after 32 years of addiction. It's taught me how to be loving and compassionate with the patients when they come in, but also be firm. My motto is I'd rather step on your feelings than step on your grave, and I'd rather step on your feelings and pray at your grave. So I don't sit there and coddle people and stuff like that, because this disease is killing us 13 an hour, 304 a day. So any chance you get, always let any alcoholic or an addict, let them know that you love them, and anybody that might be sick or suffering, let them know that you love them as well, because the lack of love is why this disease is getting the best of us. And with that, if they don't know one told you that they love you today, I love you. And our mathematics, I hope I helped one person, and let me thank you for allowing me to share. Peace.